So I'm going to take you back a little bit. I read this 2010 interview that you did with PopEntertainment.com when you were talking about the big band era, how you really loved that kind of music and how you feel that you would live back in 1941 is what I'm saying. And then recently I read this interview you did with Forbes, and you talked about Sean Colvin, how she released a single at age 41. So I kind of noticed you have this special kind of preoccupation with the number 41, and I wanted to ask you about it.
What a cool question. I honestly hadn't thought about that before, but I do love the fact that when I figured out that I was going to be pretty much exactly 15,000 days old when I recorded this new EP, I thought that just made so much sense to call the EP 15,000 Days, which translates to be about 41 years old. So yeah, I didn't realize I had talked about the number 41 before, but I love that. Thank you.
So when I watched the younger music video, I noticed you had kind of, a redhead as a child that I'm guessing is supposed to be you. And you also had someone that would be future you in a way. And I was wondering how you decided on who would play future you. Because, if it was me, I would probably just go with Brad Pitt, So how did you decide? It's not easy.
So in the younger music video, I was really lucky to be able to work with a friend of ours in Nashville and her daughter. So the little girl in the beginning grows up to be the woman in the end. And the idea that she's got the same little note that she's saved all those years, and she ended up marrying and having a family with her childhood sweetheart. But it was so incredibly fortunate that our friend Danielle has a little daughter who I think looks exactly like her. So that was just a really beautiful thing that they happened to be available for this idea. The whole concept for it came from my friend Paula, because when I wrote the song,
Paula likes to walk in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, weirdly, and that's another very strange coincidence. I feel like working on The Walking Dead actually set off a whole chain of events that completely, in a way, led me to where I am right now, which sounds very complicated, but it's just the way life works. I think if you're in the right place at the time that you're supposed to be there, then everything kind of falls into the order it was meant to be in. And Paula is one of my dearest friends, and I met her just a few months after I played Paula in The Walking Dead, which is an unusual enough name that it seemed significant somehow. Yeah. I don't know anybody else called Paula.
I don't know why. So, you mentioned this happy ending in the video, and one of your first singles anyway was about a breakup. So I'm wondering if that subconsciously, you wanted to have your happy ending after all in a way, and what you imagined when you were younger would happen, but didn't necessarily work out as years passed by. So.
Yeah, there were a lot of songs that I wrote when I was first starting to write songs consistently that were about the darker side of things, and the breakups and the toxic relationships. And I did make a conscious effort to have the songs on 15,000 Days be reflecting a more positive outlook. There's some that are yet to be released that certainly have a sense of sadness about them, but there's still hopefully a positivity about them. And I think that reflects the amount of time that I've lived as well. When we're younger, a breakup is so traumatic, and I was inspired by that, and I still am. Sadness inspires great songs, I think, and or at least a lot of different ways to look at a situation come from breakups and longing for somebody that maybe doesn't love you back in the same way. But there's, I think, a sense that I have personally now, when things don't work out the way I think they're supposed to, I tend to see the, more than a silver lining, just the sense that it worked out exactly as it was supposed to. And I hopefully learned so much from that situation that I don't have any regrets about anything. And I also don't have any regrets about making songs that are about the darker side of things, because I found those really cathartic at the time, and I know other people did too, from what I've heard about them. So I still love the song anyway. I love playing it live, and there's such a power about having given voice to something that at the time was an actual thing that I lived through that was really painful. And I think anyway is a great thing that came from that.
So I understand there's 15 songs, but only 5 made the cut. You're a producer. What do you think about those songs that got cut away? Are you kind of missing them? They're going to release at some point in some other way, maybe a digital download or some kind of like...
So we didn't end up recording those additional songs. But it's true, and I love that you've done so much research. But there were about 20 songs in total that I made demos of and gave to Shakir King, and I really wanted him to be the one to pick the songs that would make it onto this 5-song EP, which was all that we had time and budget to make this time around. And those songs will absolutely be recorded and released at some point. At least some of them will. I have played a few of them in live shows. And when I did my Kickstarter campaign for 15,000 Days, I promised my supporters that they would receive 10 tracks, whether or not it became an EP or not. So I did send them 5 additional tracks, some of which were some of those demos, and one of them is a recording that was made after the fact with a different producer, which I'll definitely release as a single at some point. But I'm constantly writing, and when I play a live show, I try to do a combination of things that I've released before, and often brand new songs that may or may not ever get recorded. There's just a lot of songs to choose from, and depending on what I'm feeling or going through at any given moment, I change up what I'm going to play at a show, often the day of or in the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of them.
So I've read that you started off really at age 10, your parents wouldn't pay, so you started writing pop songs and that kind of stuff. You were getting serious into music and that kind of thing. And I was wondering, since I understand you were homeschooled, do you feel if you hadn't been, you would have still had the same kind of creative outlet? And would you have still become the person you were? I know your parents were teachers, but do you think you would have still become the same person? And in addition to that, since I've read that you're very much about taking, your income that you make from acting and investing it into your musical career, if you feel that that's... I know you've previously said in an interview that I'm not going to pick one, and I'm not going to ask you to pick one, but do you feel on some level that, you're always a musician inside, and that's what you wanted to be, and you kind of, even though you love acting, at the end of the day, your real goal is being a musician, being a singer, the piano player, etc.?
I think that being homeschooled and the sort of, there's there's an isolation that comes with that, because you don't have obviously you're not going to school every day and surrounded by people. So I had a deep affinity for movie sets. I think partially because of that. When I made my first movie, which was Dune when I was 7, I felt just overwhelmed with glee that I was surrounded by new friends. And I think in a way being on a film set is similar to being at school, or at least at college. You have some people you bond very deeply with, and other people not so much, but you still have to work together and spend time with them. And it's like a family that will never quite be together in that same way ever again. And you get to do that over and over and over again as an actor. So I'm really grateful that I was homeschooled, because I think without question it helped make me want to move to LA when I was really young, and encouraged me to want to make more and more movies, and it helped me fall in love with that whole world. I don't really know how I might have reacted to being on a set, or if it would have had quite as profound an effect on me without the fact that it was so very different from my life up to that point. And yeah, in terms of making music, I always, from the time from really as long as I can remember, I've wanted to make my own songs and release them and play shows. But when I was first starting out, I studied classical music and competed, and it's a very disciplined form of music making. So I think by the time I moved out to LA, I was feeling a little less excited about playing classical music, certainly. And I wanted so much to be an actor and be able to support myself at that. I really put all of my creative energy that way. And I played piano for a living to support myself while I was waiting to get the jobs that were going to be able to support me, acting-wise. I think that now I want to prioritize this side of my life, and I look forward to turning down acting jobs to be on tour, and hopefully to have 15,000 days and all of the music associated with it be the start of another chapter where there's, in my dream world, I visualize people humming along to the songs and knowing the songs, and then maybe finding out afterwards that maybe they've seen me in something before. But I just feel very strongly that these songs are supposed to be out in the world, and I feel such a connection to people when I'm playing for them. And the idea that as a writer, you can take something you've experienced and hopefully translate it into a form that other people can put their own experiences to, and give people a way to express something in their own head, or give them a melody to hum along with that they can use to help heal from something, or to feel inspired about something going on in their own life. I can't imagine any better feeling than that. And I just want a lot more of that at this time in my life.
I heard Mike Shinoda say yesterday that lyrics matter. And I was wondering for you, do you start off writing a tune, or do you write the lyrics first? How does that creative process work?
I tend to write the lyrics first, almost always. There are some times when the song and the lyric come together. The melody part of it and the lyrics will just be in my head at the same time. But for the most part, I just have so many lyrics. I'm always having ideas for a line or a chorus, or something will happen, or I'll think of something and it'll just inspire a line. And I have pages and pages and pages filled with those. So when I go into a writing session in Nashville with other writers, whether it's a song for me or hopefully for another artist, I often start with those. And those sessions are especially great if there's an idea that nothing more is coming with. Sometimes all I'll get is a specific line. And other times that line, when I sit down to the piano myself, it will inspire an entire song. And then sometimes an entire song just comes with the lyrics and without the melody. And then I have to work out what the melody might be. But that's pretty much how it goes for me. Once in a while I get a melody without any lyrics, but that doesn't happen so often.
I was reading in Forbes, they asked you a lot of questions about, I want to say this nicely. Well, you have a single, it's called Younger, obviously, and you were talking about, like, basically age discrimination, that you, even from your own friends, that, like, they said, like, oh, you're a certain age, you can't get started in a musical career, and you said, I can always get started anytime, it's just what I want to do. And especially for you, since you started off kind of as a child actress in some ways, since David Lynch found you. How does that compare to suddenly having, like, almost like an invisible hand that wasn't there before? Does it bother you actively in the back of your mind? Like, if, let's say, because you mentioned that some music you didn't want to give it to a label because it could be buried and never released, even if they take it. How does that affect you to know such a thing, essentially?
I have this just absolute certainty that I'm in exactly the right place for where I'm supposed to be right now. And so I'm just not concerned about any notion that you're supposed to become known as a songwriter when you're a little bit younger. I mean, I am the age I am, and I feel like these songs wouldn't have existed before. And I also feel like we are in a time right now when I do see that any age discrimination is kind of evaporating. That's my take on it anyway. I feel like that's less and less of a concern. It's so irrelevant. I mean, it's something I personally don't even think about. So I guess I don't really have a perception about whether it is a thing or not. But there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not the least bit worried. And I just think about the kind of performer I was when I was younger, too. Me personally, I wasn't ready to do this yet. I didn't have the confidence, and I wasn't as good of a writer, and I wasn't as good of a singer. And it's all just the perfect timing for this. And I'm not, I don't feel like this EP would be better served if I had pursued having a label release it. I know it's going to find exactly the audience it's supposed to. And I have heard so many heartbreaking stories from musical friends of mine who have either had a label pay for their project and then never release it, or the label acquires it after it's been recorded and then they don't release it, or they release it in a way that's incredibly disappointing. I love that I had this extraordinary experience to work with a world-class producer like Shakir King and do it on my terms, and it's all because of Kickstarter and those incredible people who came forward and made this happen. It's just so much more special than if a label had put up that money and then it belongs to them. Now I feel like it belongs to me and those 640 people. It's our record. And it gives me a sense of just incredible conviction that I'm supposed to be doing this. And if that many people were not only wanting to hear the music but willing to put their money towards it, that's a huge thing. And I feel a great responsibility to do my very best to release it the right way, to make each of these videos that I'm creating the best they can be, and hopefully just try and make the world a little bit of a better place through this music. It's way more personal than any acting role I could ever play, too, because it's all just coming out of me. So, yeah, no characters. It's just whatever I feel like expressing in front of that microphone or at the piano. So, yeah, it's and I loved, though, that the fact that the first single is called Younger, because it just kind of ties into this whole idea that there would be some people who might say, hang on a second, you're not supposed to be making music, or I don't know what they would say, but they wouldn't say you're not supposed to be making music, but there is a perception that some people believe that if you don't have a super established music career before a certain age, and this is purely in the music industry, there's just that idea that there's no reason to do it or something. I don't know. But I don't live that way.
It's good that you don't. So I've read that you told the Washington Post when you were talking about your Kickstarter campaign that you feel around 17 or 18, you know what you are, and then you kind of lose sight of it, and now you feel that you've come back to that. Why do you feel that was the age that you knew, your path, so to speak?
Well, this ties into why the idea behind the song Younger, in fact. When I wrote it, when I had the idea for it and wrote most of the words for it originally, I was thinking of the fact that not only did I have a very strong conviction of who I was at 17 or 18, and even younger than that too, but
I read you're a child prodigy.
well, just the idea that I knew who I was, though. I mean, the confidence I had and the sureness that I had to, for example, move to LA and make movies and television, and that was my path. I didn't question it for a second, and I never questioned that I was going to find work. It wasn't an option. Nothing else was in my head as a possibility. So I think when you're that young and you just have this vision of what it is your life is supposed to look like, you haven't yet had any disappointing experiences that might cause you to question that. And of course, as an actor, every actor knows, even the most successful actors are constantly being rejected. That's just the nature of the business. So it's similar with music too. And you get to a point where that doesn't matter anymore because you realize it's just part of it and you don't take it personally. You can't. There's nothing personal about it. But it's interesting to me thinking back on that version of who I was. And then I think the version of me that I am right now is way more similar to her than who I was in my 20s or early 30s. That was just a different somebody trying to figure it all out and trying to put it all together, like what I'd learned and what I thought I was supposed to be and what I thought other people wanted me to be. But not only that, I think that other people have a similar path. And I wrote the song Younger from a place of wanting to connect to somebody else's 17 or 18-year-old, the one that knew exactly who they were supposed to be. And the idea that maybe if we just break down all the walls we put up as we get older, that would be a beautiful place to connect to somebody without any of the fear and without any of the formality or overthinking it. And I love that the video made it out to be more of a love story. I wasn't thinking of it as a love story that had actually began when the people were younger. But it's my favorite kind of music videos are the ones that take a concept that was not what the writer or performer had in mind and bring it to life in the video. So I really love that. But I have to say that now every time I perform Younger, I am thinking about that younger version of myself, and even younger too, like 7-year-old. That was a very confident little person. So I am enjoying reconnecting with her when I sing that song.
So you're going to be playing live at the City Winery, and I'm curious, are you going to be recording a live edition? I know you released a live CD a few years ago. Is that a plan for this tour?
I hadn't thought about making a live recording at City Winery till just now, but maybe I will. That's a really good idea. It's my first time playing at City Winery, and I've seen so many shows at the ones in New York and Nashville. I've never played City Winery Chicago before, so I am really looking forward to that. And I understand they have a grand piano at City Winery. I have to find out whether I'm playing the grand piano or if I have to bring a keyboard in. But playing a grand piano is always an extra added bonus. You just have that feeling that you're at this substantial instrument.
It's legit.
It's legit. Yeah.
So you're going to be releasing another music video. Can you tell us about that? I understand you finished editing process. So
as I sit here today, I've just watched the final edit of my next music video, and I really love it. I co-directed this one, and it's a song called Still Sorry, which is going to be the second single. And that's a good example of one of the songs on the EP that is about a feeling of longing and wishing you could maybe go back in time and make another choice. The first line of the song is, someone asked me yesterday, was there ever one who got away? And so it calls to mind that question, and although we can't go back and change anything and it all goes the way it's supposed to ultimately, it was a song I wrote thinking about a scenario that I go on to describe in the song. And then the music video tells a completely different story. Again, it's a video that I think is a completely fictionalized account of the story that I was originally writing the song about. And we filmed it in Prague. I was over there working on an Amazon show called Lore, and I wanted to do my best to film on the weekends while I was over there, because there's so many extremely talented actors and film crews. And I actually made 2 music videos, one on each weekend that I was there. So I had an incredibly busy couple of weeks in Prague. But this video should be out, I think, around July. I think the single is coming out July 13th, and the video will either be out the same day or possibly the following Friday. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
What's been the process like of writing 15,000 Days? Was there ever a period where you thought it might not get released? Because I mean, it did start as a Kickstarter campaign in a way. So, would you have written it for yourself, no matter what, even if you couldn't have gotten the producer you wanted, or what do you feel about it? I mean, obviously it's awesome the fans got you there and everything, but what do you think?
The songs that make up 15,000 Days already existed. So at the time that I was so fortunate to have Shakir King come on board and want to produce some of those songs with me, I had the songs. I had been writing, and Still Sorry actually was written about 7 years ago. So that's just one that, talk about one that got away. It was a song that kind of got away. I had played it at a few live shows, and like so many songs, it just kind of got buried under more new songs.
Did you rewrite it?
No, not really. There was actually one line that changed, one line that improved a lot, I think, in the chorus. I won't say which one. Maybe I will at some point. But aside from that, and we lost the bridge, but it was the same song aside from that. But yeah, there were songs that were very new, and there were songs that were a little bit older. And the songs would have, I think, they would have been recorded and they would have ended up being released in some incarnation, but they wouldn't have been the same if Shakir hadn't produced them. The same way that I felt it was important to give him the choice of which songs he gravitated most towards, because, for example, there's one song that is on the EP called Blinkers, which was one of the ones that Ben Folds was maybe going to produce for our album together that he produced, Revisionary History. And we started tracking it, and he just wasn't feeling it. And I so appreciate that, because there was a song on that album that I tried to record with a producer called About Me. And in fact, 2 different producers had a go at that one. And it just wasn't right. And I couldn't have said why. But neither of those versions got released. And then he heard it, and he instantly knew what to do with it. And I love that recording of it. I'm sure nobody else could have produced it but him. And I feel the same way about Blinkers. Nobody could have produced it but Shakir. I just absolutely love this recording. And it's got a groove behind it that was totally not what I heard at first. I remember being in the studio and thinking, I don't know if this is right. But within about 10 minutes, I knew it was more than right. It was just magical. That's why I think a producer like Shakir needs to have the choice as to which songs he's going to produce, and then somebody else is going to make the other 15 that he listened to and ultimately didn't pick.